We've all seen lions, tigers, and bears, but most people haven't seen an animal that contains DNA of all three. It's actually possible for certain animal species to be interbred and procreate strange-looking hybrid animals. Today, we'll be taking a look at 7 of the most scary hybrid animal. Number 7. Spider goats. Okay, you've heard of Spider-Man, but what about spider goats? Spider goats are very real and a new addition into the world of living oddities created by science. But instead of swinging from building to building and saving the city once a week, all these goats do is produce milk that contains spider silk. But because these goats have had their DNA spliced with the golden orb spider, the silk from the milk can be extracted and used to make all kinds of amazingly strong materials like parachutes, fishing lines, and even body armor. These spider goats are totally amazing and seriously unusual, but don't expect to find silk milk on the shelves of your local grocery store anytime soon, because they're strictly bred and farmed for science. And if you don't believe me, just reach out to the University of Utah and they'd be happy to show off these amazing spider goats on one of their many guided tours. And always just remember that with great power comes great responsibility, even for goats. Number 6. Wolfin. Alright, this next entry of wacky hybrids is probably one of the rarest in the world, which is saying a lot, and probably one of the coolest too. The Wolfin is what you get when you cross a female bottlenose dolphin and a male false killer whale, which is actually a member of the dolphin family and not an actual killer whale. Just imagine what that would look like. But the Wolfin is a super cool hybrid that does in fact exist in the wild, and more people have been seeing them, albeit still far and few between. But of course, this is the type of animal that you'd mostly find in captivity, with the first being produced in Tokyo SeaWorld in 1981, who unfortunately died after just 200 days. The first Wolfin in the United States was birthed at the Sea Life Park in Hawaii in 1985, named Keikaimalu, which means from the peaceful ocean, and she was a hit from the moment she was born. And it's not hard to see why, with her darker skin, nice row of 66 razor-sharp pearly whites that she shows off with every wide smile. She was even able to produce offspring, which sadly passed away after just a few days. But her second calf lives a far more successful life, living to be about 9 years old. It's safe to say that the Wolfin still needs some genetic fine-tuning to become a mainstay within the animal kingdom. Number 5. Geep. Not to be confused with the four-wheeled Grand Cherokee, the Geep is a funny little hybrid animal made when a sheep and a goat successfully procreate. But that pairing doesn't always work out, and many Geeps are never carried to term and come out as stillborn. So like some previous list entries, the Geep is a rare find. So if you do manage to catch a glimpse of one, consider yourself to be incredibly lucky, because these little guys are cute as hell. The very first case on record of one of these little hybrid babies being born dates back to the year 2000, when a male sheep impregnated a female goat at the Botswana Ministry of Agriculture. The baby Geep was born with a coarser outer coat and beautiful woolly inner coat, and it came with the legs of a sheep and the body of a goat. It sounds a bit like a mythological creature, but much to the chagrin of the caretakers, it was totally real. Sadly though, like many hybrid animals, the Geep is infertile, so the idea of an entire flock of Geep running around in the meadow is just a pipe dream. But while he couldn't create any offspring, the Geep in Botswana would go for anything that moved, chasing after every female sheep that he came across within the facility. You go, Geep! Number 4. Green Sea Slug. Claiming the number 4 spot on this list of hybrid animals is probably the most unusual yet. It's none other than the green sea slug. This slug is a strange little beast, incorporating the genetic material from the algae that it eats into its own DNA. So talk about you are what you eat. It's one of the few animals on Earth with this characteristic, and floats about in the oceans looking like a big green plant. But because the slug feeds on plants, it uses photosynthesis to create its own nutrients as well, which is what gives it its bright green color. Scientists have even called it the emerald green Elysia. So instead of being the product of two different animals, the green sea slug is made up of everything, everywhere, all at once. It's pretty crazy, and it's still baffling scientists around the world. Research is still underway as to how the green sea slug is able to do what it does. And as of yet, this amazing slug is the only successful instance of gene transfer from one type of complex organism into another. You'll typically find these guys hanging out in the shallows of tidal or salt marshes and creeks, So the next time you're hanging around in those areas and see some bright green leaves floating about in the water, there's a chance that it's actually a green sea slug hiding in plain sight. Number 3. Tigan. Very similar to the Liger, the Tigan has the same parents, only this time the roles are reversed. The Tigan is the epic offspring of a male tiger and a female lion or lioness. But it is amazing how, despite having such similar parentage, the Tigan looks so different from its gender-swapped counterparts. These hybrid animals are absolutely gorgeous with their light tan stripes and a nice white underbelly, all topped off with a big mane and spotted head. And as you could probably guess by now, there's no way that a tiger and lion are mating in the wild. Tigers are incredibly solitary, with their domains spanning for miles and miles, and lions mainly sticking to their pride. On the off chance that these two animals came across each other in the wild, the odds are it wouldn't end well. So the Tigan is only ever going to be found in captivity. And there's no way these hybrids could ever be released into the wild, because they would sadly never be accepted by either species. But such is the life of a hybrid animal, I suppose. The Tigan's history dates all the way back to 1943, when one was successfully birthed at the Munich Hellebrunn Zoo and even raised to adulthood. And while there have been just a handful of exceptions, the majority of the Tigans you'll come across at your local zoo are sterile, meaning each one is both the first and last of their family. Number 2. A Lepin. Ligers and Tigans and Grolar Bears, oh my! And if you thought those were freaky hybrids, then just wait until you see this one. When a male leopard successfully mates with a female lion, you get the Lepin. These hybrids are animals that are rare, with only a handful ever to exist, all of whom were bred in captivity. The Lepin has both a unique and beautiful appearance, and looks like something Hercules came across during his 12 labors. The Lepin has the head of a lion, a beautiful mane, deadly jaws and all, but with the spotted body of the leopard. If this thing ever got out into the wild, there's no doubt that it would be the apex predator and absolutely dominate the jungles and savannas of the world as it blends into its surroundings, stalking its prey. But luckily for us, that's never going to happen. The world's very first Lepin was bred in India at the turn of the 20th century, and now more than 100 years later, it's believed that there are only about 100 in existence today. The minute one of these Lepins are born, they enter the endangered species list. It's one strange yet beautiful existence. Number 1. Killer bees. We'll bet you didn't know that killer bees are actually hybrid animals. That's right, these horrifying little fuzzy buzzing creatures are actually the product of human interference. Created back in the 1950s, scientists were putting their heads together with the goal of increasing the world's honey production, so they bred a few different species of bee. They took the typical honeybee and mixed them up with the African bee in a lab in Brazil. The result was a big bee with a nasty attitude that was supposed to live out its days in a controlled environment. Too bad for the scientists, though, and the rest of the world, that these new hybrid bees broke loose. And unlike so many hybrid animals, the killer bee is very, very capable of producing not just honey, but offspring. Their defining characteristic is their strong will to defend the colony at all costs. And unless you're deathly allergic, the sting of one killer bee won't be too much. But the thing is, you never just see one killer bee on its own. These deadly little insects love to hang out in swarms, and if you ever come across one, there's no way you can outrun them on just 2 legs. This is one hybrid animal that you want to steer clear of at all costs.